Sitting before we listen to the suttas, or before reading the suttas, or during Dhamma talks. Cannot be overestimated in its importance. So it's good that we were able to sit just to allow the mind, the heart to relax, to open up, to make room. It's like emptying our cup. Because during the day, during the week, or since the last time we were present at a Dhamma talk, could have filled up the cup a little bit. Despite what we might think of it as being extremely helpful in our progress, insights might have been occurring for you. These are wonderful things, but during a Dhamma talk, or especially when you're reading the suttas, it's always good to start from scratch and come back to a beginner's mind, or a beginner's heart, perhaps even better. Today, in our 21st century world, where we have a knack at minimizing the importance of days gone by, or finding ourselves living in a different time period with different customs, that need not cause us to have a mediocre position towards the Dhamma. Meaning, what we have seen and do see constantly throughout the suttas, the teachings of Lord Buddha and his Arya Savakas, we see they were doorways for the person, or a springboard for the person to jump to a higher level of being. Their personalities would change. They would become noble. Nothing is stopping us, nothing is stopping you from attaining that, except for oneself. So when we hear a person, a student, a lay person, or a bhikkhu, or whatever, asking a question from Lord Buddha, they're available. They're fully available. They're starting from scratch. So it's crucial for us to have that beginner's mind and not think that, yes, I have this much wealth of knowledge, so this is just going to be another layer I'm going to add, another page, another certificate, another... No. We toss all that out. That's why we're sitting. Every time we sit, we are tossing everything out. Now, how many of us can actually do that? But the moment you realize that you're doing that, you already are understanding what it means to have upadana, grabbing, clinging. These are not just words. This is your life. Each of you, each person. We do this. This is not someone else's paticca samuppada. It's one's own. Nibbana will not occur so long as we have all this junk. Even if there's extra few drops in that cup and the rest of the cup is empty, still it is not clean. Don't worry. The good that you've learned from the discourses and any exposure you might have had or experiences in your practice, if they were true, then they have already left their mark, haven't they? So you don't have to carry them over your head. You don't carry all the books that you went through throughout your life in schools, do you? The countless pages you had to read, you don't carry them in your pocket. Any experiences and knowledge and education they could have or should have done for you with hard, real serious work of studying, then they already have. You don't carry those with you. Similarly, empty the bucket. Every time you're reading the suttas, every time you're listening to a Dhamma talk, and then we will be able to really taste what's being said. Just a reminder. So today's, we resume today our Sutta Exploration series. And today's the sutta is from the Samyutta Nikāya, the connected or kindred discourses. And it is from the, Samyutta Nikāya. And today's is from the collection of the six sense bases, Salayatana Vagga Samyutta, and it is from the section that bears the title of serpents, Asivisa Vagga. But the sutta itself is called the Paṭhama Dārukkhandha Sutta. Paṭhama means the first part, or part one. Dārukka, in this case, means wood. I translate it as log, but when you put it in context, Dārukkhandha can also mean, as you'll find out in the sutta we'll cover together, driftwood or bundles of wood that are floating on the surface of water. So there's two suttas. In today's will be just one sutta. It's the longer one. There's also the Dutiya Dārukkhandha Sutta. And the theme is somewhat the same, if not almost exactly the same, but there we have Venerable Kimbila asking questions, but the answers are more abbreviated, one could say. But this one is the Paṭhama, which is the part one of these two suttas, and they come back to back. So the sutta number is SN, which stands for Samyutta Nikāya, 35.241. So 35.241. It is the Paṭhama Dārukkhandha Sutta, the log, part one. Once, while the Blessed One lived in Kausambi, he went out walking on the shore of the river Ganges. Then, by the way, Kausambi is the very well-known region or town where there was the first official schism between the Sangha members. And obviously it happened during the time of Lord Buddha, where you had groups of bhikkhus criticizing rather severely, viciously, because you had one group who was adhering to the Vinaya. In fact, they were adhering to ignorance, not the Vinaya. They were just using that to basically minimize the importance of the other bhikkhus whom they blamed for breaking the Vinaya, even though it was something quite menial and very, very mundane. But it showed the ignorance of people, especially the disrespect that they had shown towards Lord Buddha, who came in to create a harmony amongst them. So I've covered that incident in previous discussions in the past. So Kausambi, that's notorious place, very well known place from the Sasana's history. So, excuse me. Then the Blessed One, on seeing a huge log being carried along by the current of the river, addressed the bhikkhus thus: Bhikkhus, Do you see that huge log being carried along by the current of the river Ganges? Yes, Bhante, we do see it. Bhikkhus, if this log does not reach the near shore or the farther shore of the river, if it does not sink in the middle, nor get stranded on higher ground, if it is not seized by humans, nor seized by non-humans, if it is not caught in a whirlpool, nor corrupted from within, then it bends, slants, and meanders all the way to the ocean. And what is the reason for this? Bhikkhus, it is because the current of the river Ganges bends, slants, and meanders its way all the way to the ocean. Lord Buddha was the master of metaphors, analogies, giving a contextual picture of the Dhamma. Whatever he was teaching, it was always accessible thanks to his masterful, superlative usage of analogies, similes we call them. And here is another example. He would look around, and in this case, they were walking on the bank of the river Ganges, which is very big, especially when it's, flowing in the melting ice caps of the Himalayas. They're rushing down, and the river is high. And so in this case, it's still flowing. It's not dry, but the edges. But you see, Lord Buddha is always looking for an opportunity to teach the students. And that's what a teacher does. And that's why they're teachers in the first place. The teacher doesn't exist for oneself. That's why modern day teachers don't fit the bill of being called a teacher. There needs to be selflessness. Lord Buddha had done his job, We forget that. He had completed the task. He didn't have to teach and teach for 45 years incessantly. We forget that. We take it for granted. Oh, yes, he was a teacher, as if that was his job. It's all dedication. And here is an example of the teacher looking around, and he's pointing at the river and saying, oh, do you see that drifted, that log floating down the river? And by asking questions like this, the teacher can engage the student's sati. Because who knows, the bhikkhus might have been looking at the birds, maybe some people were swimming in the water, maybe there was a cow herd over there somewhere. Everybody's eyes would be somewhere. Not everyone was keeping their sati and sampajanya on the six sense doors. So the teacher's job is to get everyone's attention by asking a question and turn that into an opportunity to teach the Dhamma. It's just beautiful. And Lord Buddha continues, in the same way, bhikkhus, if you do not reach the near shore or the farther shore of the river, if you do not sink in the middle, nor get stranded on higher ground, if you are not seized by humans, nor are seized by non-humans, if you are not caught in a whirlpool, nor corrupted from within, then you will bend, slant, and meander all the way to Nibbana. And what is the reason for this? Because bhikkhus, it is because right view bends, slants, and meanders all the way to Nibbana. Right view. If you have right view, it's only a matter of time, Lord Buddha is saying. But we must maintain right view. We have to really follow right view because you're always under attack. It's not just coming in from the outside, it's also from the inside. Anything to dislodge you, to obstruct your path from reaching Nibbana, from tasting Nibbana. There's nothing to take for granted here. So that is the premise. This is where Lord Buddha said, and he has just given an invitation to students to ask questions. See, students must ask questions if they don't understand. And there are suttas where Lord Buddha says what he has to say. It's in a, like this, very concise, it's packed. And then he sees no one asking a question. Guess what he does? He gets up and leaves and goes to his kuti. One perfect example is the Madhupindika Sutta, where from the Majjhima Nikāya, where Lord Buddha talks about the Honeyball Sutta. And it's so packed, it's so dense with Dhamma, but the bhikkhus don't trouble themselves with asking a question. Excuse me, Bhante, what did you just say? What did you mean by this? What do you mean by papanchas? None of them asked. And then eventually they looked at each other after Lord Buddha was gone, and they're like, okay, what do we do now? Because we know that he gave a lot of condensed, saturated Dhamma. What do we do? Oh, let us go to Venerable Mahakachana. He's the one who unravels. And that's what, so here is an example where that didn't happen. So we're going to have a bhikkhu who has the courage to say, excuse me, Bhante. Now, when this was said, a certain bhikkhu asked the Blessed One, Bhante, what is the near shore of the river? What is the farther shore? What is the middle? What is it to sink? What does sinking mean? What is getting stranded on higher ground? What is being seized by humans? What is being seized by non-humans? What is the whirlpool? And what is corruption from within? So he just did us all a favor by asking all the right questions. And Lord Buddha is going to concisely, very succinctly answer each one. Bhikkhu, the near shore of the river is a synonym for the 6 sense bases. 6 sense bases. Synonym, it's a metaphor for your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, your body, your mind. So that's this bank of the river where they were standing. So that's a usage of that image. And obviously, when there's this bank of the river, we have the opposite. You can't have a river with only one bank, one shore. It has to have both sides. Bhikkhu, the farther shore of the river, is a synonym for the 6 external sense objects. What is the object of the eyes? Visible form. What is the object of the ears? Audible sound. What is the sub-object of the nose? Smells. What is the object of the tongue? Flavors. What is the object of the body? Tactile objects, things that we touch. And what is the object of the mind? The 6th organ. Thoughts, concepts, memories, perceptions. That's the other shore. Bhikkhu, to sink in the middle is a synonym for greed and longing. Sinking in the middle. In the water. In between the 2 banks, what do you have? You have the wide river Ganges. To drown in the water, in the powerful currents of the river Ganges means when the eye sees an object, a visible object, because of craving, because of tanha, what happens? We get stuck. Oh, that's a beautiful, visible object. In fact, we don't just stop at it's a beautiful object, or it's a disgusting smell, or it's a wonderful sound. We don't stop there. We get dragged down with the feelings that are generated because of that visible object, which we now are rolling in, just like a crocodile comes and grabs hold of a victim, and it does this, what they call the death roll. It starts rolling, rolling, rolling in the water until the victim, the prey, is so disoriented. Especially they'll do that by dragging the prey, the animal or the person that they bit into the bottom of the river. That's what craving does. And that's why it's so hard for us to catch ourselves, to recognize what just happened. Wait a minute, I just saw a visible object. It was an object. Okay, fine, granted, it was pleasant looking or pleasant sounding, but I lost myself in it. I forgot that I was using the eyes. And the eyes, what do? They see visible objects. That's it. But no, we go into the stories. We lose ourselves into the stories. We go into the death roll and we get dragged down into the bottom of the river. We sink because of what Lord Buddha says, greed and longing, lobha, longing, wanting, oh yes, that experience, I want to recapture that. Or capture that in the first place. We forget that this is just an eye seeing an object. There's nothing personal there. That's what a healthy eye will do if you have the necessary conditions. If you have light, if you have an object that reflects back light. So the eyes that are healthy, and you're looking at it in that direction, and there's attention given, manasikara, guess what? There's going to be eye consciousness. You're going to see it. But that's it. No story, no added history added, no papanchas, nor no mental proliferations added. Bhikkhu, to get stranded on higher ground, is a synonym for the conceit, I am. Again, Lord Buddha is using all these images because there's higher ground. Sometimes if you look at a river at a certain time during the year or its flow, what you will see is these tiny little islands that show up. And you might even find bamboo growing or trees growing on that tiny little patch of land where, as the water receded a little bit, you still have this somewhat of a landmass. That's a higher ground. Now, when you're looking at the object, who is looking? I am looking. Who said that nasty word? They said it. Who said it to, to whom? They said it to me. You insulted me, You hurt my feelings. Or that person has done something that I cannot forgive. Who cannot forgive? I cannot forgive. Who again? Asmimana, the conceit I am. Well, what about a year ago, if this thing happened? Or that image that comes to mind, where, let's say you're rowing down the river on a boat, and suddenly you get jolted. Something hits you, and you turn around and you see there's another boat, and there's someone in the boat rowing. And you look around, it's a wide open space. The person says, why did you hit me? Couldn't you follow? Can't you see where you're going? From all this empty space on the river, you pick me to hit me? Where were you looking? So automatically, what happened? I took it very personally because this person slammed into my boat. But let's say another time I'm rowing the boat again, and again something slams into me. and I turn around and no one is in the boat, but there's a boat, do I get angry? No. I might even start laughing. What happened? No added layer of asmimana was presented. It was just something that happened. It might even feel whimsical, strange. But I definitely will not take it personally. Now, can we look at our daily interactions like that? Without jumping on that higher ground and just looking at it and saying, this is happening to me. This is my problem. This is my loved one who is in pain, who is suffering, as if no one else is in pain in the world or has never been someone who lost their loved ones. We just isolate it and we just pretend that that's only happening to us. And what bhikkhu is being seized by humans? Here the bhikkhu lives associating with lay people, sharing their interests. Grief, pleased with the pleasant, unhappy with the unhappy, as he identifies himself with whatever situation that arises. Whether you're a monk or you're a lay person, it really does not matter when it comes to living the spiritual life. You need to be dedicated to the spiritual life because you only have this body right now. That's why, in this case, the bhikkhu, in Lord Buddha's example, is spending too much time with lay people, getting involved in their interests. I would see sometimes bhikkhus, even years ago, when I was a layman for many, many years, bhikkhus who I would have a tough time to distinguish them as being non-lay in their interests, watching video game or watching sports, having preferences of things that don't necessarily have anything to do with a bhikkhu's life or a spiritual life. So Lord Buddha here is talking to those bhikkhus amongst them to be pleased with the pleasant. To be pleased with the pleasant. Like, well, who doesn't like that? Anyone who is exposed to the pleasant naturally will look at it and taste it as something pleasant. Be dragged into it. We lean into it. We start looking for it. But that is not the reason why we live the spiritual path. And if you notice, I mentioned whether a lay person or a monastic, it shouldn't make a difference. Same attitude. Let's say you go to the supermarket as a lay person and trying to find, or to the store to buy your favorite vegetable or fruit or dish to eat, or to the favorite restaurant. But they're closed, or they don't have a table, or the item is finished, or they sold out. That was going to cause you to feel pleasant. But now that is not there. Are you still feeling pleasant, or is that turned into a painful experience? If it has, then you're not living the spiritual life properly. Why? Because life came and just shook you a little bit, slapped you around a little bit, and you took it personally. Painful, the same thing. It shouldn't shake us. It shouldn't shake us. But that's what's happening in life. We're always being pulled in this direction and that. So in that sense, yes, Lord Buddha is talking to bhikkhus here, but we shouldn't just think of it, well, this is not related with me right now, 26 centuries later. Unhappy experiences will happen to everyone. It's very relative. It's specific to each of us in our own, unique ways. But we all experience some level of unhappiness. But am I really being shaken up by it? Or does my spiritual practice come and do something, allow me to look at things in a rather different way? Is it giving me an opportunity to have insights, to have a better understanding? This is where when the Dhamma no longer stays in the suttas. This is when it's becoming alive. This is when it is becoming relevant to you, thanks to these experiences. That's why the Dhamma is never in some book or in some Dhamma talk. It is in the marketplace. It is when you go shopping. It is when you go outside, when you are dealing with people around you, where you're not allowing things to shake you and dislodge you from your practice of sati, at least to observe how am I feeling during the day? Can you do that? Can you ask yourself, how am I feeling about this? When a person is saying some things to you and you, let's say, find it hurtful, are you following the words? Are you planning a rebuttal to what they're saying? Are you preparing for an attack the moment they quiet down? Are you ready to interrupt them? Or are you watching what is happening inside of you? That is what a person who's practicing this spiritual life does. It's never about the world around you. It's always about you. It's always about you, the person. Because you're pulling the sense of identification out. See, when we talk about anatta, these are not some philosophical concepts, nor are these things that we keep repeating to ourselves and thinking that we know the Dhamma or we understand the Dhamma. That has nothing to do with the Dhamma. Your life has everything to do with the Dhamma, your personal life. The moment you pull out and you're observing what's happening to your body, to your heart, is your breathing the same as it was when you first sat to meet this friend of yours? But you were not expecting them to say those words. They took you by surprise. So now it's your blood is boiling, as we say, right? Because they're saying some unpleasant things or surprising you. That increase of body temperature, blood pressure, your mind is now going all over the place. The agitation in the mind, that means you have taken things quite seriously. Meaning you are now fully identified. You are in the boiling soup of atta, myself, self. That's atta. The person who practices sati and sampajanya is a person who is able to pull themselves out and just observe what's happening. That's what we mean by kaya anupassana. That's what you're doing when you're observing the indriya bhavana, when you're looking at the faculties, in this case, the body. The body feels. Or in this case, the eyes, or the ears. Your ears heard the words. They were just words. Just words. You hear words all the time. Noise, sound. But this had your name on it. It said, you did this, or you are told this. And now I am like completely open. I am pulled in. So this is where being seized by humans, the way Lord Buddha is describing it, takes shape. So you leave the spiritual life, in a sense, whether you're a monastic or you're a layperson. And we do that all the time because of our relationships, because of the career. Sometimes people actually leave, or they're they're living a lay life, but they have this longing. The Dhamma is so vibrant in their hearts, and they want to go ahead and fully dedicate themselves to the practice. But they always say, well, my career. What does that mean, my career? Well, I have to make that much money. I've had people who said, well, my goal is to retire at this age, Bhante, and I want to have this second or third apartment, and I want to have enough money just in case, and then I'll go and dedicate myself to the Dhamma. That's a person who's delaying, as if they know for sure that they will be there to buy that second or third or fourth apartment. That they will be able to, amass that much money to retire at that age, as if that is for sure. It's a done deal. We keep postponing all the time. So in that sense, career, relationships, your boss, your partner, your family becomes the person who is seizing you, seized by humans, as Lord Buddha was mentioning. So even sometimes titles or status, well, Bhante, I can't just walk away from that. But you're here asking me, how could you dedicate your life fully? Whether you want to become a monastic or you want to even come to a retreat, even a single day retreat. Well, I have a very important presentation to make. I have a very important meeting to go to. My boss or my colleagues expect me to, okay. It's like you're the one who came asking for my help. You've been doing that for 365 and a half days throughout the year. But obviously, that job, that career, that relationship is not doing it for you. You're not happy. That's why you're seeking the Dhamma. And now the Dhamma is there, you're running away. Seized by humans. And that human could also be oneself, by the way, because they themselves are the obstacle on their own path. And that's what most of the time happens. So the person just gives up pursuing the holy life. Even they stop sitting, or they do a very mediocre job at it. They don't put an effort. There's no adhitthana, or they do it as if they're doing the teacher or the Buddha a favor or something like that. It's a joke. The dedication is dropped. The valuable time and energy is not given to it. One time I was telling a group of listeners back in Los Angeles during a Dhamma talk, I said, we all have more dedication to the bank that collects the mortgage, or the landlord to whom we have to pay our rent, or to the car company, credit company, from whom we have borrowed this or that item. We have more dedication to that than we have for the Dhamma. Why? Because we're always alert. We're balancing our checkbooks. We're trying to see, do I have enough money? You're very alert. When you go to buy something, you're checking to see if you have enough funds in your bank, in your pocket, in your wallet. What is that? That's the wrong kind of sati. That's ayoniso manasikara, by the way. Why? Because you're not putting the attention where it's supposed to be. The bank is not going to lose money, They're not going to go bankrupt because you didn't make a mortgage payment. But you might not come back. If you die right now, when you come back, even as a human being, we don't know if you're going to end up at a time when there's Dhamma. Or you might even have different interests. Because this life's conditions have brought you to the Dhamma. The set of circumstances made you look at life in a different way. But when you come and you start from scratch, early on in life, as a child, in a different environment, you might never, ever get close in that life to anything remotely Dhamma. Again, being seized by humans. That's one example. So this bhikkhu is called being seized by humans. And what bhikkhu is being seized by non-humans? Here, bhikkhu, someone leads the holy life with the intention to be reborn in some heavenly realm. Thus, he lives the holy life while thinking to himself, by observing these virtues, observances, and austerities. May I be reborn in the company of such and such a God, becoming one. This, Bhikkhu, is called being seized by non-humans. So many people today, unfortunately, hundreds of millions of people who call themselves Buddhists, believe this. That's their life goal. They have the beads, you know. You go in different parts of India or Asia or anywhere in the world today, you see people doing this. You go to Japan, you see this. You go to China, you see this. You go to Tibet, you see this. You go to the US, you see this. Saying a bunch of mantras, and what is their goal? To be reborn in a heavenly realm as a deva. Why? When you poke around, they'll say, well, because such and such a Buddha, or the Dhamma at least, is there in that realm. There. They've never been there, you know. But they're pointing in a certain direction with their finger, saying, there is Dhamma. Meanwhile, they're in this body at a time period where there is still Dhamma. Isn't that ironic? Or should we say, stupid? That's what's happening. Many people hope to be reborn in a heavenly realm. And let's say they do land because of the wonderful merits that they gather, because of the good work that they do, or the generosity they show, where they're joyous in their hearts. Okay, fine. Let's say they are reborn in the heavenly realm. The enjoyments of pleasurable experiences are unimaginable compared to what we have here. Remember what I was saying about being seized by humans in the previous paragraph? This is devas. The deva realms has so many enjoyments that it is very difficult, if not impossible, to even think about the Dhamma. We need dukkha, you know. Everybody's running away from dukkha, but we don't realize that because of dukkha, the eyes will turn towards the release from dukkha. That's nibbana. Lord Buddha taught two things, right? Dukkha and the release from dukkha, nirodha. So if you have pleasure all around, why in the world would you think about nibbana? What are you going to release from? This is another thing which many people stupidly, idiotically, omit to consider. That's why you don't even have to look at the heavenly realms. For example, you can look at celebrities of today, rich people of today, royalty of today, or of the past in history books. How many of them actually engaged in meditation? How many of them truly engage or engaged themselves in activity that indicates to you that they were practicing sīla? How many? How many politicians or bankers do you know who do that? I personally know no one, nor have I come across someone who does it. They have the perfect role for us. You don't have to be looking for devas. You can just look at these because they are in a much higher level of having access to resources that you dream of having as a common lay person with, you know, certain level of income. They don't think about them. And that is enough for us to serve as an example as to what will happen to a person in a deva realm if they land there. Now, of course, if a person has practiced and has come across the Dhamma and is already a noble disciple, whichever realm they go to, the Dhamma is beating in their hearts, as if they're a noble disciple. We don't worry about them, because sooner or later their journey will come to an end. Bhikkhu, the whirlpool is a synonym for the 5 strands of sensual pleasures. 5 sense pleasures. Now, this we don't include the mind into this, but Usually that's the 5 strands or 5 chords. Sometimes it's translated into English like that. So we need to understand that everything is trying to grab our attention, our energy, stealing our time from us, which is, by the way, your greatest asset. Time is the most important asset, not the money you have in the bank or in your pocket, not the intellectual information you've gathered. It's your time. How do you spend your time? Who do you spend your time with? And if the mind is always engaged in thinking about gaining more and more and more sense pleasures, then we know where your time is going. That's why an hour of sati is worth more than living 100 years without sati. Just a moment of sati. We're trying to grab this. We're trying to grab onto that, seizing this. And every time we do, there's identification. Now, this word whirlpool, in Pali, it's vattang vattati. Excuse me. Whirlpool. What is a whirlpool? Water that's supposed to be flowing in a certain direction suddenly finds itself in an obstacle. It gets stuck. So it is not going in one direction nor in another, but it is stuck. It starts pulling itself downward, spirals. It's a vortex. It's a whirlpool. And anything that it grabs onto and drags down. Remember that image of a crocodile pulling the victim down and doing its death rolls? That's another example we have here of a whirlpool. But how? Well, how do we connect? Sense pleasures. Eyes, for example, and the object of the eye, a beautiful scenery or an attractive person or something delicious that you want to eat. It's there. It was always there. Now your eyes suddenly locked on and you see it. That locking on, that holding on is like you grab hold of a string, let's say this string of the mic, right? It goes on in one direction, go on in the other direction. But the sense of identification comes and guess what? It does this. Holds on to this in the middle. Now what do we have? Yes, it's upadana. Yes, this is a sense of identification. Now we are stuck. This is now my experiencing of that delicious thing, my experiencing of that horrible sound. And now I can't get away with it because it's going to pull me in. Pull me in. Just like in the case of a whirlpool, it was not there. The water, the ocean, or the river, it was just normal. And you couldn't point at this part of the ocean, that part of the ocean, right? Because it's the ocean. Until there's a grabbing of an area, like in your case of experiencing sight, sounds, even pleasures. But the moment that we pinch, we're pinching onto reality. That's the problem. We're pinching. Another way to understand a whirlpool is the connection between nama rupa and vijnana. They keep pulling each other in, so long as there is the sense of identification. And this is in connection to what I was also saying earlier about anatta. Atta is you pinching that all of a sudden that rope now has a point. Think of it in terms of a circle. A circle, just a line that goes in a circle. If someone comes and points to you, show me, asks you, show me where the beginning of this circle is. Can you show them? It's a perfect circle. You can't. But the moment someone comes and puts an X or a point or a knot on that circle, now we have a point of reference. That's a whirlpool. Because now I can look at the ocean that has a whirlpool and I say, to the left of the whirlpool, you'll find this. To the right of the whirlpool, you'll find that. This is my pain. How come it's happening to me? Do you see now the pinching? The taking, the grabbing, being stuck. And that's why we get pulled down. And that's how life gets interrupted. Each of us are stuck in our own whirlpool of ignorance. And this is why sati will pull you out. Sati is that life vest that someone throws at you. Lord Buddha is that someone, by the way. And that life vest or the raft that was thrown at us is the Dhamma to pull us with your help of your sati, application of sati, using your sense pleasures, the senses. Again, it's not the object. The object might be delicious, disgusting, attractive, repulsive. It's only you who are adding those adjectives to it. Because that same attractive thing that you're looking at now will lose its attractiveness the moment you go blind. Or a blind person and you walking, you're looking and you're saying, wow, look at that attractive thing. And the blind person, your friend standing next to you, looks and looks and looks, is not even moved. What happened? What happened? It's the lust in the heart. Or sometimes you look, but your mind is elsewhere. You can't even see it. I was mentioning to some listeners the other day how when Columbus's ships arrived in the Americas in 1492, the local native people of the Caribbean islands, where they had docked the ships, they were looking and they were seeing shiny things on top of the water, but they couldn't see the ships. These are human beings. They weren't blind. They were fine, but they never had seen it. The eyes were there, functioning perfectly, and obviously the objects were there, but they weren't able to see. This is a fact. We have this on record from the logs of Columbus and his men. Until the shaman goes through some rituals and he's able to see in a dream time. He's able to see what's over there, and he helps the locals to also see the ships. Why? Because there was no identification. Now there was. So that's another way that you can cut that connection of upadana between what you are looking at and making the excuse that I can't help it. I'm just angry because he said this to me or I heard that. Don't pinch the live stream. That's what Lord Buddha was telling Venerable Bāhiya. He said, Bāhiya, when you're looking, just see. When you're experiencing something, just experience it. Don't turn it into a story. Don't pinch. Don't interrupt life like a whirlpool does interrupt the ocean's flow or the river's flow. The whirlpool is a disruption. And just like I was showing you the string, the wire, this is one. If I go ahead and grab in the middle of it, now there's two. See? When there's just the seeing, it's just seeing. There's no attractive object and me looking at it. It's just the seeing. Same thing with the hearing. So the moment we grasp the rope that is being whirled, the whirlpool, we get pulled in. And that's why it's funny sometimes people come and say, but I want to let go of this. Yeah, but where's your awareness? You know, night and day, you're thinking about this. What does that mean? You are grabbing onto the rope, and it turns into a cyclone. If you don't hold it, it won't do anything to you. It won't do anything to you. One time when I was a child, and it was very hot hot and humid in Lebanon, and my parents were sitting and watching, and my brother and sister were watching TV, and it was like early afternoon, and so we had a fan that my father had bought. So I would be mesmerized to see the blades of the fan moving, and sometimes the fan would move in a way as if it's, you know, going retrograde, as if it's moving back. And I would just put my face against it, even though it had its, you know, the grill or the screen, the metal screen, to stop people from harming themselves. So I would make sounds like I think almost every child does or has done. And, but I didn't stop there. I wanted to touch the blade as it was moving fast, because I was enjoying the nice wind that was coming, you know, in my direction. So I put my thumb in through the cracks, and I pushed it until it touched it. And it touched it pretty bad. And you know what happens after that? It took about 1.5 years to have the nail grow back. And it was a painful experience. I was trying to grab hold of life. I was trying to grab. This is what we do normally with the sixth sense doors. The moment you have a bad memory come of an experience you've had, let's say, or a fear of a future one, we don't want to let go, but we're fighting it, but we don't want to let go. But how do I not let go? By not looking at what's happening underneath my feet right now. I am stuck in the past or in the future. I'm not living. I'm grasping. Meanwhile, existence is happening, but I'm pinching at life, trying to live the fabric of nowness, the now, by grabbing hold of it. And that's the surest way that I'm stuck, either with the memory or at least not moving forward with my life. So we want to not just see, but we want to grab and be glued to the thing that we are seeing and what it's making us feel, like I was saying in the beginning. What we're touching, what we're thinking and remembering, and how that's making us feel. That's the vortex, that's the whirlpool. Energy that is stuck, basically. Meanwhile, life is going on. This is perversion. And that's what Samma Sati has the power to cut us loose from. This is why we go on retreats. This is why we meditate. This is why we practice Satipatthana, to break the whirlpool, that pinching of the rope, that holding on to the rope. And if these images are too complex, imagine you're standing at the edge of a dock, okay, and somebody, you're holding a rope. How's that? A rope. And the rope is being pulled by something or someone much bigger and stronger than you. And it's pulling. Let's say it's a big, giant cruise ship. And you're holding by yourself, standing at the dock, the rope. If you don't let go, what will happen to your hands? They'll start to burn and bleed, and soon you won't have any hands. That's another way of looking at the whirlpool. And it's based on ignorance. And what, Bhikkhu, is the corruption from within? Here, Bhikkhu, someone does not live with virtuous behavior, thinks evil and vile thoughts, commits unwholesome actions in secret, and only pretends to be a recluse and never truly living the holy life. As a result, the evil thoughts leaking from him will overtake him. This is corruption from within. This is not just for bhikkhus, okay? This is for everyone, but bhikkhus especially. Virtuous behavior must be with every one of us. And the robes will not protect you from evil and vile thoughts, you know. We have 227 rules. Why? Because there were bhikkhus who were having evil and vile thoughts. Not just thoughts. Actions, physical actions. And that's why Lord Buddha instituted these rules. But rules are just superficial. They're on the surface. You could get away with much, and people do that all the time. On the surface, they're practicing sīla on the surface. But this is not about bhikkhus at this point. This is about us. How does this relate? How does this matter to us personally? Let's stop pretending then that we're practicing sīla or pretending to be something or someone that we're not. And the best way to do that is to take a step back, start from scratch, as I was saying in the beginning. Start with the beginner's mind. So long as you are alive, you have air in your lungs, you're fine. You got nothing to lose to practice sati. But if you don't, you have everything to lose. Your life and this big opportunity. But especially again, here, I will turn my attention to the bhikkhus. Enough committing of unwholesome actions, deeds, words, and thoughts. Our loyalty must be to Lord Buddha, to the Dhamma, to practice purity. That's parisuddhi. That is the purification. That's what the main essence of tapas is, to practice purification of oneself. Unless we're arahants, we're failing. For bhikkhus, that is. So that is the only reason why we're wearing robes. Again, the only reason. Not to have a big temple, not to have a following, not to have big supporters. That is not the reason we become bhikkhus, or not even to have PhDs, or to have very wealthy, powerful friends in governments and this and that. That's not why we are bhikkhus. This is what Lord Buddha is saying to us, if we are that kind of bhikkhus. Corruption from within. And, okay. Meanwhile, the cowherd Nanda, while standing close to the Blessed One, was listening to the Blessed One's explanation. So the bhikkhus were not the only ones listening. There was a cowherd with cows. Then Nanda, the cowherd, addressed the Blessed One and said, Bhante, I do not reach the near shore nor the farther shore of the river. I do not sink in the middle, nor get stranded on higher ground. I am neither seized by humans nor by non-humans. I am not caught in a whirlpool, and I am not corrupted from within. Therefore, Lord, may I be granted the going forth and the higher ordination. What a beautiful statement. He's saying, all these things that you've listed, Lord, I'm clean. In fact, I'm not even corrupted from within. But in order for me to go to the other side, to just cross this flood, this ogha, I want to take the pabbajja and the upasampada, the higher ordination. And here's the Lord Buddha's acknowledgement. In that case, Nanda, first return the herd to their owner. So he was simply a foster parent to the cows. He was just doing it as his day job. So he says, okay, then just go, because you can't just be a bhikkhu, because if you're a bhikkhu, you have no connection with these cows. And what's going to happen to the cows? They're left without an owner or somebody to guide them, to help them get back. So first finish your task. First finish your responsibility, and then come back. Bhante, they are with calves, and they will return on their own. These are mother cows, so they have calves. And I remember when I was in Armenia, there would be cows walking in front of the house I was staying, and they would not have any human accompaniment. They would just be there, walking around. And sometimes when I would go hiking in the nearby woods, I would see cows there, unattended. And then I asked some villagers, and they said, "Oh, don't worry. They always know when to go back." And I thought that was just lovely. The cow just finds its way back. So in this case, especially with the calves. Nevertheless, Nanda, you must return them to their master. Then the cowherd Nanda, having returned the herd back to their owner, came and approached the Blessed One and said, "Bhante, I have returned the herd to their owner. May I now be granted the going forth," that's the Pabbaja, "and the higher ordination in the presence of the Blessed One." Then at that instant, the cowherd Nanda obtained the going forth and the higher ordination in the presence of the Blessed One. And before long, the Venerable Nanda, while practicing diligently, while residing secluded and withdrawn from the crowd, achieved the highest goal of the holy life, for the sake of which good sons of families rightfully go forth from home life into homelessness. Thus, by realizing it for himself here and now, the Venerable Nanda became one of the Arahants. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So beautiful sutta, and it's simple living life experiences and how it could be. We don't have to be looking for the Dhamma in books and some suttas and some Nikāya. Here's a perfect example. Living normal life situation. Driftwood, a log going down the river. You might not be living next to a river, no driftwood around to look at or point at, but I'm sure you find cars and taxis and motorcycles or people or birds, or there's a lot going on around us. Even if you're just living by yourself in your small apartment, there's so much that we can be looking at and observing. Are we aware that we're observing? That's the question. And if we are, then you already are on the right path because you're practicing sati. Now, sati is not just sati. It has to be samma sati. Right? Right mindfulness. And what that means is, where is your attention, your wise attention, your wise reflective attention? Where is it? When you're looking at something, what is it that you're seeing? Is it something to do with the person who gave you that thing, that cup, that table, that portrait, that whatever? Or are you just seeing? This is a very good exercise to neutralize your attention in a sense. Because later on you might find, and you will find during the day, that you're pulled into a certain type of an encounter, an experience that is a lot heavier than just a mere glass or a cup or a portrait. It's a very lively experience. Someone is looking at you or wants to kill you with their eyes or with their words, or at least you feel like they are. Your body reacts to it like as if it is going to be killed. That's why we're taking things serious personally, identifying with it. That's pinching at life, interrupting life, stopping the flow of nowness. So Dhamma is happening all around us, within us. Are we there to see it? And the moment we are, already you set foot in the right direction. And it's just a matter of time. until you attain Nibbana. Another thing I was thinking of this week was this very important phenomenon that I see a lot in us, and that is we don't allow ourselves to attain Nibbana, you know? There's always this thing, postponement. Earlier I was giving the example of, well, I have a presentation, I have this, I have a partner, I have my dogs, who's going to walk my cat, or something. But when you go digging deep down, you will see that the person is unwilling to allow themselves to awaken. Sometimes maybe it's because we feel we don't deserve it, or it's supposed to be very hard, so I'm nowhere near it, Bhante. I cannot possibly. Why not? So the person has to mentally allow themselves to attain, and not think of it as something that, oh, it happens over there for 26 centuries ago, or I have to be in robes, or I have to be living in a kuti far, far, far away in a different galaxy. No, we have to first allow it. So I will stop here and see if there are any questions. I think the battery is dying, so let me put the charger in. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Mum's the word. Okay. So I guess there are no questions. Okay, so let us then transfer some merits. Akasatha chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanam. Akasatha chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desanam. Akasatha chabumata deva nagamahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all be well. May you continue holding the hand of Sati. Or have Sati sit right here, next to you, on your shoulder, wherever you go, on your pillow, when you wake up, when you go to sleep. Always, always with you. Until next time. Oh, by the way, I was hoping to see, well, I will do my best to have us do these Sutta explorations, not every 2 weeks, but every week. So, yeah, that way I think it will create a little bit more Samvega in you and in all listeners. So, yes. Until next week, be well. May the Triple Gems blessings be with you all. Sukhihot.